motors.
Hey, thanks for joining us on the From the Bench podcast presented by Projectile Warehouse. I'm your host, Taylor Weezy, and this podcast is going to revolve around phone calls that you might make from your reloading bench to fellow reloaders and experts in the field. This week's episode of From the Bench podcast, we have with us BJ DeGroot from Strike Without Warning. He's the creator of the TMB, which is the tunable muzzle brake, and I'm heaps excited to have BJ on because barrel tuners are something that I'm really interested in myself and want to get on my rifle and get using, and a lot of people in the industry at the moment are talking about. So when it comes to barrel tuners and reloading, BJ is a perfect guy to talk to because he does a lot of both, creating barrel tuners and reloading ammo. So I hope you enjoy this one. How are you, dude? What's going on? How have you been? We haven't chatted in a while. What's happening?
Yeah, it has been a while, hasn't it? No, I had a good day today. Just got a solid practicing session in the afternoon. Just run that tank trap. So yeah, it's been good.
I saw that tank trap footage on the Instagram, and I got to say, I do love the short shorts. They get me a little bit excited every time I see you rocking positional shooting in the short shorts.
I'm proud of the tan. That's it.
Oh, that's gold. It is such a tradie thing, right? I mean, you're an electrician, yeah? So
a bit of everything, really, being a builder. I mean, sometimes you're doing electrical work, sometimes you're being a chippy, sometimes you're being a labourer, whatever it is.
Yeah, nice. I like it. Hey, thanks for jumping on with us tonight, mate. I'm been really keen to talk to you for ages. I mean, like, obviously we've caught up and talked in person and stuff, but to have you on the podcast is exciting because the product that you've created is very topical. Barrel tuners at the moment are sort of a bit of a hot word in the PRS community and all the shooting community in general, really, anyone reloading. So thanks for jumping on with us, mate. I really appreciate it.
That's all right. Thanks for having me, bro. It's just good to chat to you as always.
Yeah, that's it. Hey, so let's start off with Monado Meltdown, the first PRS national match for the year and for the last 2 years.
Yep.
That was your first national level PRS match, am I correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Man, you burned it down. Got to say, I shot in your squad on day one and I was super impressed. We had heaps of fun. You nearly made the top 10, right? What did you end up?
I think it was 11th in the end of it.
Yeah, right. I think your mate Ben got you by like 1 point or something, right? You guys were battling it out all weekend.
Yeah. I was pretty gutted. As you know, I'm pretty competitive. So, yeah, screwing up those two stages, it really ruined me points-wise. But, other than that, I think I shot pretty well.
Mate, you can't be too dissatisfied with that. Like, I mean, a lot of us were in the same boat. It was our first national level PRS match for so many of us. And like you, super competitive. I was trying to keep up with you guys on both days and was sort of just dragging by a few points behind you each day. And it doesn't take much I think I finished 18th or something. And the difference between a top 5 or a top 10 position back to sort of where I was is nothing. Like, you can't afford those small mistakes. So like, I think in all things considered, we all did pretty well for our first match.
Oh no, I agree. I absolutely nailed it. And I think the thing at the end of the day that really separates, the top 5 from, I'd say, the top 20 is just those mental mistakes, because it was, our first national level matches. We were making those small little mental mistakes here and there, drop a point here and there, have one really bad stage. Whereas those guys, they didn't have like really bad stages and they'd only make a mental mistake just here and there. So I think just in the end of it, I just have to practice and work on match experience and not making those mental mistakes,
Yeah, totally. What do you think was like the biggest thing you took home from the match? Like, as far as like, man, I really need to work on that. What was for you in particular? What was something that you just were itching to get home and practice?
Honestly, just the mental mistakes and just like, just really just forcing myself to really get the heart rate up and juggle as many things as possible so that I'm smooth and I'm calm and I'm not making those silly mistakes like shooting the wrong target. Because I did that plenty of times and that was just dumb,
Yeah.
But yeah, just things like that.
Yeah. Were you happy with how all of your equipment performed? Were you like super stoked on how your gun was running and what gear you chose to use on each stage and everything like that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was really happy with everything until that last stage, the long stage, where I had that mag malfunction, and then I got that what was it, double hang fire because of the mag malfunction, and then I timed out. So
yeah, I think you still had one of the better scores on that stage, though. It was if for anyone who obviously that's listening to this that didn't shoot Monado Meltdown, one of the stages we did on the last day, which it was actually my favorite stage. I scored I think I got a 12 or something, which was up there with some of the best scores. I think did you get 11 with your like mishap as well? Yeah.
I got 11, yeah.
Which is still so good, but it was a 5-minute stage. There was like all these instructions you had to remember and you had to carry all your gear with you. It was very sort of, I guess, field matchy. You sort of had to take your gear with you and remember the sequence and which targets from which position. It was just a lot going on. And you had 5 minutes, which is a long stage. It was unlimited round count. So like, yeah, it was pretty epic stage. I actually had heaps of fun on it. But yeah, mate, if you didn't have that mag malfunction, you could have been top scorer on that stage, I reckon, the way you were burning it down.
That's what I was going for. I think everyone saw me spit the dummy and throw the mag afterwards because I think I only missed one shot and then I just had the benches. And I mean, yeah, I honestly felt like I wasn't going to miss. So, oh well.
Something that is so fun watching you shoot is, well, one, the short shorts, but also you're running the American Rifle Company Archimedes action. Have I said that correctly?
Yeah, that's it. That's my baby.
That's your baby. And that thing has like, what is it in it? Is it mechanical eject? Is that what it's like?
Yeah, that's it. The mechanical ejector.
Oh, dude. And it spits your brass when you eject it across it goes across the range. Like it's on like the other shooting position. Like people are trying to shoot a stage next to us and they're ending up with your brass just flying over there. And ROs are like, yeah, I got no idea where your brass is because they sort of try and collect it for you after each stage and your brass is just gone. And it's super fun to watch it flinging. It's like a semi-auto just flicking it out there. You obviously enjoy getting that brass out hard.
Oh, it's just when you run the action fast. Because, I do that Ricky Bobby thing, I like to go fast as I can. And when I run the action fast, it just throws it real far. But if you run it normal, like, it'll throw it normal. But, I got no self-control. I just run it as fast as I
can. That was actually kind of fun, like shooting with you and I had talked quite a bit and sort of had, I guess, like an online friendship. We'd never sort of met in person until Monado. But it was kind of cool to see, like, we're both sort of very the same when it comes to our reloading and our interest in the sport, but how different we are as shooters. Like I'm super slow and I don't miss many shots I take, but sometimes I'm too slow and don't get enough shots off. So I'm on the other end and it was actually like, it was cool to see because it challenges me to go, all right, I need to push myself to take the risk to just go all out. Like you just go win it or bin it style and you just go, I'm going to shoot this stage flat out and trust that I'm going to get on. And when it's working for you, it's really, really good to see. Like you'll obviously just get in that zone. And I think I need to push myself to speed up. And maybe we need to meet in the middle somewhere. Maybe you need to just tone it down sometimes.
Well, I definitely do sometimes. But I mean, that's the interesting thing because I mean, you used to race motorbikes as well, yeah?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So we both race motorbikes and I don't know, I guess that's the way I used to race as well. I'd just ride it till the wheels fell off. And I'd either crash and go down the ball of flames or I'd win, So I don't know, maybe you were a bit more, you had a better strategy and you were a bit more calm.
Yeah, well, I was exactly how I shot. I was always Mr. Consistent and I stayed within my abilities, you could say. And my thing was that I never quite pushed myself enough to sort of take those risks. So my shooting reflects my racing career and it looks like yours does too.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's great, mate. But no, anyway, it was super fun shooting with you, dude. Had an absolute blast and can't wait to do it again and work on those things that we've been talking about. How long have you been reloading for? And like what got you started in reloading and what got you passionate about reloading? And yeah, just those few questions to get going.
So I guess I started reloading about 3 years ago. That's when I properly dived into precision rifle. And I really got into the whole PRS sort of thing and long range hunting thing. And I started reloading just to, I guess, save money. Not really, but to shoot more and make better quality ammo and more of it for, I guess, my ammo budget. You get what I mean? Because it's not like we really save money reloading. We just shoot more.
That is
for the amount of money that we would have spent. Yeah.
Such a misconception. People get into reloading to save money. But like once you dive in, you're like, I ain't saving anything when I add up the time this takes me to do it. But I mean, I'm sure you could save money if you were happy with keeping things quite budget, but I don't think that's either of us.
Yeah, no.
So you got into it then and enjoyed it? Like you stuck it out with the, your basic sort of setup for a while, or did you pretty quickly advance to a more full-on setup and a very detailed process? Because I know you have a very detailed process when it comes to your load development. Like we've talked about what you're happy with and what you're not happy with. And I was kind of like, oh my gosh, like if I kept reloading until I got to the point with what you'd be happy with, I'd be down a barrel by the time I got there.
Yeah, I'm. I guess you could call me a perfectionist and a bit of a snob sometimes. So, like, I try to do the whole buy once, cry once. What's that terminology?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Buy once, cry once. Yep.
Yeah, I try to take that that route, but the issue with being in Australia is, you can't always just go into a shop and see everything. You can't always try everything. Sometimes you've got to pay for it and you've got to try for it that way. So I started off with mid-level setup. It wasn't really what I wanted. It's what I thought I wanted. But then when I started really getting into the reloading and finding my process and finding how I want to do things and what works for me, I found that wasn't really what I wanted. So I ditched that pretty quick and I got the Forster Coax and the Chargemaster Light and just a good mid-level setup. Started using a Mandrel instead of the expander balls and things like that. And from there, it progressed pretty quickly and I quickly found my feet. Started getting some good results.
And were you frustrated up till that point, or did you kind of have success straight away? Like, what was because that's something Rusty and I spoke about, how I dove into this, I only really started reloading under a year ago, like when I got my first precision rifle, if you could even call it that, but which was October, November last year, and dove straight into the reloading thing. And we were sort of talking about how I'd had a reasonable amount of success pretty quickly because of the amount of research I'd done going in. Were you sort of the same? You'd done all that research and you sort of found, yep, this isn't too difficult straight away? Or did you just learn by making some mistakes and trying things out?
A bit of both, really. I scour the internet pretty often, and I'm pretty detailed with my research before I actually pull the trigger and do things. So I felt like I had a pretty good understanding, and the results, they were pretty decent, off the bat. But yeah, it was once I ditched what I thought I wanted, and then I got the coax, and I started using a Mandrel, and I went to the Starline small rifle primer bras and things like that. Things really started to click for me, and then I really started to get the success that I was after, because I could get 3/8 half-inch groups pretty quickly and easily for a 5-shot group, but it wasn't until I got the newer setup that I was getting the results more or less that I am now.
Yeah, right. So basically, you found a way to add consistency to that process, right? Whether that was better gear or changing your process, adding in the expander mandrel rather than, using the expander ball that's on the resizing die, things that just add a level of consistency to the process is kind of what I'm hearing. Changed a few components and that got you to where you are now.
Yeah, I essentially stopped doing the things that I found weren't necessary and focused on the things that would give me the performance that I wanted. And yeah, that's pretty much where I wanted to end up. Like, do the least amount of things as possible to get the most performance, if you get what I mean.
I totally get what you mean. And that's like a time thing. I'm in exactly the same place. Like, I've just placed an order on an auto trickler.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? Baller. I've gone straight from the beam scale, which was just there's so many people were like, I can't believe you're loading this amount of ammo on a beam scale. I'm like, yeah, I can't believe it either.
I definitely can't.
You wanted to give me a medal, like you almost said to me, like when I told you my reloading setup, you were giving me like a congratulations, mate. Like, I don't know how you're doing that.
Yeah, like somebody needs to give you a hug or a high five or something for sticking it out as long as you did.
And don't worry, the hug and the high five was not coming from my girlfriend, because the amount of time I had to spend in the reloading shed to get the ammo done, it was like she was never seeing me. So she's so okay with the money I've invested into the new setup because of just the time it's going to save me.
Yeah, she can get you back.
Yeah. But like, that leads us into that. Like, you wanted to spend less time to make the same quality ammo, and so many people are in the same place, and that leads us perfectly into your product that you've designed, which I cannot wait to get my hands on, mate. I've wanted one of these since I saw them. I wanted one of these before I even started reloading. But let's talk a little bit about your company, Without Warning, and your product, the TMB, which is a tunable muzzle brake. Tell us why you wanted to make that product. What got you started in that? I think it's pretty much exactly what you just said. It was buying time, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. With my reloading, I was pretty much I ditched the VLDs, which are more of a jump sensitive bullet. They like to be close to the lands. I ditched them and I went to the hybrids. And I found that the hybrids jump from about 50 thou to about 80 thou, but normally around 70 thou. And when you get a brand new barrel, you break it in, you can pretty much set them around 70 and then just leave them there for the duration of the life of the barrel.
Yeah.
The load will open up at some point. You can do a bit of, work to the load to bring it back in, or you can just leave it there and just deal with, half inch for the rest of the barrel. So being a bit of a perfectionist, but then at the same time being lazy and wanting to do as little as possible, I was like, okay, well, how can I, get the performance I want without having to do more load development? Because yes, I do live on a farm, and yes, I do have 1,000 meter range in my backyard, but I don't like going to the bench and then driving all the way back here to do shooting and then going back there. It annoys me. So I'd rather just, make up a whole bunch of rounds and use a tuner to just do the work for me. And that's pretty much where I ended up after my research, that a tuner would, allow me to spend less time at the bench and just be able to tune things with the barrel tuner. And quickly after doing all the research and figuring out that I wanted a tuner, I came to the realization, this was about 2 years ago, that the only tuners that were available, you pretty much had to modify your barrel to fit them to the barrel. And those tuners, they didn't, lock in place. And then obviously, you had to modify the next barrel and so on. So I was like, well, why hasn't anyone done a tuner and a muzzle brake just in the one device? So you can just screw it on the end of your barrel, and have it lock in place, so that it's secure and your settings aren't going to move or anything. So after doing as much research as I could to make sure that, somebody hadn't done it and I just didn't know about it, I decided to go down the path of coming up with that myself.
That's awesome. And like you said, the tuner idea is not a new thing. Like barrel tuners have been around forever, and there's heaps of them. But it's it's putting a new spin on it. I think now that there's so many of us PRS shooters and even hunters and different people that are wanting to shoot more and practice more, so their round count's higher. So they're needing to spin barrels on and off quicker. They're needing to load more ammo. So you're just doing more, and you're wanting to cut down those processes. Like if you just had to load 10 to 20 rounds a year and you could make those 10 to 20 rounds as precise as possible, matching that barrel, like easy. But when you're doing hundreds or you're swapping barrels in and out, thousands of rounds, like you're saying, it becomes more complex. And you wanted a product that, I mean, most of our barrels are already threaded. The ends, most barrels have a 5/8 thread ready to go for a muzzle brake that we all run anyway. So you were like, let's make a product I can just put straight on there, move from barrel to barrel. And at the end of the day, if you don't like it and it doesn't work for you, you're taking it off. So you've kind of just simplified that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What sort of research did you do around like different barrel tuners, and how did you come up with what you wanted to use, like what sort of weight you wanted to have, and how many threads you needed it to have, and all that sort of stuff? Like what process was there involved in that?
So pretty quickly and pretty easily, I figured out based on all the bench rest and the F-class guys, because like you said, tuners aren't anything new. Those guys have been doing this for a long time, and they've pretty much done all the work. They figured it out a long time ago. So pretty much for the thickness of the barrels that we have and the weight and the contours, a 4-ounce tuner pretty much is a good middle ground that works for, an M24 barrel all the way up to a straight barrel, like the straight barrels I run. And you'll pretty much be able to, tune in a load without your adjustments being too coarse or too fine. So pretty much you want a 4-ounce tuner that's as compact in its length as possible. So it can be really tall, that's fine. It's just the length of it that you want to be compact, because it affects the barrel more when you're making your adjustments. And you want that as close to the muzzle as possible without going past the muzzle. And you want it to be threaded onto the barrel or, muzzle brake or however it attaches with a 24, 1 in 24 thread minimum. You can go up to probably about 32, but even with 24, you're still getting 1/1000th of an inch per adjustment when you're moving the tuner, and that's enough, really, without going too overboard.
Yeah, cool. So, like, you obviously done heaps of research on that. So, you're the perfect man to explain to us and the listeners just exactly how a barrel tuner works. I mean, we've talked about it briefly with other guys I've had on the podcast, and I sort of got my head around it. But I'd love to hear from you your description of how a barrel tuner works, and what it's doing that you can't otherwise do unless you go back to the reloading bench.
So a barrel tuner affects the harmonics of your barrel. It changes the harmonics of your barrel to match the ammunition that you're shooting. So that essentially is what a seating depth test does. And the ability to do a seating depth test or refine your seating depth without having to touch the ammunition is obviously a big plus. You can shoot factory ammo and dial it in. You can have the same load between barrels and just dial that in. You can do load development, get as close to the middle of a node as possible, and then dial yourself to the middle of the node with the tuner. So there's a lot of benefits to it. Essentially how it works is the harmonic waves of the barrel, they look like your typical sound waves. They go up and down. There's peaks and valleys. And what you're essentially trying to do is when the bullet leaves the end of the barrel, you want all of the bullets to leave the end of the barrel at the same time and the same point in the wave. So the top of the curve is where the barrel is moving its slowest and it's there for the most amount of time, and that's when you want all of the bullets exiting the muzzle. The reason for that is the speed will be the slowest as far as that feet per second, but it will be the most consistent. And that's essentially what gives you your positive compensation.
Yeah. Right. So, so like that's exactly what's happening when you're playing with seating depth. When you're pushing a bullet into the case or further out of the case to create more or less jump into the rifling, you're changing that. One, you're changing sort of the pressure spike, the pressure curve, so it's a different harmonic node, like wave going down the barrel, but you're also changing the amount of time it goes from being in the case to out the end of the barrel. And so, like, I think that's sort of a hard thing for some people to understand is your barrel doesn't just stay rigid. Like it's it vibrates, like you're saying, those nodes, those waves, they wiggle around. And when the bullet flicks out the end, it's going to be somewhere along that wave. The end of that barrel is either flicking up, coming down, going sideways. And what you're saying is by using the tuner rather than using the seating depth, by moving the bullet in or out to land in that sweet spot where that barrel's just nice and consistent, and you get small groups because it's always flicking it at the same spot, you're able to actually tune reverse. You're tuning the barrel to the load rather than the load to the gun, which is a really cool thing to do.
Yeah, it's not what we're used to because it's not really something that's been a big part of our sport. But I mean, obviously in the F class and the bench rest, it's pretty common for those guys to be using tuners to dial themselves to the middle of a node and things like that. But yeah, I mean, once people get their head around it and they try it out and they do it with friends and figure it out, I think people will see the benefits of it for sure.
Yeah, I think like it's super advantageous for so many people, for reloaders and for people, like you said, buying factory ammunition, or you might be in a pinch and you might not be able to reload, so you just buy some factory ammo. And if you've got the tuner handy, you're able to come up with a load and get that gun to shoot. So it's not necessarily going to make your gun do anything that you couldn't do before, but it cuts down that load development time, like the amount of shots you'd have to fire previously to test if you were bang in the middle of the node. Because you and I spoke at Monado about this, where you said a lot of people will think they're right in a node and they'll think they're in the sweet spot, and they won't realize how close to the ragged edge they either are one way or the other. The lands might move a little bit over the course of a match and suddenly their load is terrible. And they were like, hang on, I thought I had my seating depth like spot on. And what you were explaining to me with the barrel tuner is you very quickly see, by spinning that tuner and making those adjustments, just firing 2 or 3 shot groups at different points on the tuner, you get this data sheet, you get this hard copy of, being able to see, okay, the load's terrible, it comes in, it shoots a small group, then it goes big again, and oh, look at this, it shot 3 small groups in a row, that must be in the middle of a node. And you're able to get that feedback so much quicker than you would if you were just doing it with load development. So you're not necessarily doing anything that the rifle couldn't do before, but you're able to get those results quicker and maybe more definitely. You can kind of go, yep, like I'm bang on here. I can see these results easier, and it's confirmed it for me. It's not as much voodoo magic going on.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. You're not going to gain any accuracy using a tuner, but it'll help you access the maximum amount of accuracy, precision, that you could get out of that bullet and that barrel than you would have been able to before. Because unfortunately, I don't think everyone is as good at reloading as they think they are. But once you get a tuner, it definitely is that easy button, and it allows you to see what you're actually capable of achieving with a bullet and barrel combo that you weren't able to before.
Yeah, because I think, like myself included in this for sure, because I'm so new in it, is like my ability, or a lot of reloaders' ability, to make consistent rounds can be pretty high. We can all punch out a whole heap of rounds that have we've prepped the brass all the same. We've got the exact amount of powder, like spot on in each case. We've weighed it very specifically, very precisely, and we've seated the bullets, and we're very happy with our run out. They're all seated quite bang on. But if we don't have the knowledge, which comes from one, research, but also like just years and time and practice of doing it, if we don't have that knowledge base of being able to know how to test for these different things and test how close we are to the ragged edge and, all that stuff, like you're saying, this is a way for us to maybe skip like the fact that we don't have that knowledge and we don't quite know where we are. We've made consistent ammo, but we don't know how to adjust it if it's not quite right. Whereas the barrel tuner is just that little bit of a safety crutch to kind of go, okay, I've made some consistent rounds, but they're not necessarily shooting as good as I would like, or maybe they're sort of a bit temperamental, and then using that barrel tuner to, just hone in on where they really like to be.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Like, it just gives you that confidence that you know that when you start load development, you're going to end up in a place where you're happy. Whereas before, I mean, you could get a bullet and barrel combo and you could, pull your hair out and be 100 rounds in, your 100 rounds that you bought for load development, and it's, you're still not happy with it. Whereas if you've got a tuner, you know that at some point you will be happy with it because you will be able to dial it in with the tuner. You just got to get as close as possible as you can with your seating depth and your powder charge and your brass prep, and then the tuner can do the rest.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like something for people to keep in mind. I think we were talking about it with Plushy, who I've had on the podcast before. He sort of said, a barrel tuner won't make a load that doesn't shoot. So like, let's just say someone's got the wrong bullet that doesn't match the twist rate of your rifle, that the bullet's flat out not stable, or you're so far away from the ballpark and it's shooting, 5-inch groups or whatever. It's not going to make that rifle and that load shoot. It's not a magic device that you screw on the end and suddenly you make all of the impacts, because I wish we could get one of those. But, if you're in that ballpark and you have selected the right components and you have a rough idea of what you're doing, like you're saying, you're going to be able to have a good outcome by using it, because essentially you're doing seating depth adjustments on the fly. You're saving yourself going back to the reloading room and having to try more ammo, and you could do that out in the field. And you and I spoke about that, and I had that light bulb moment with you where I went, oh my gosh, a barrel tuner is probably the only device that can actually tune a rifle from the outside. Is the only device that we can tune the load without having to go back to the reloading bench. So I was like, this makes so much sense, because like as a backup, like if I've traveled all the way to Darwin to shoot a PRS match and I've just loaded the same ammo that I've been loading all year, but I haven't caught something that maybe my barrel's worn out more than I thought, or maybe my seating depth die had been bumped and suddenly I actually haven't, got those rounds to where they needed to be. If I've got a barrel tuner, I don't need to stress, because I can actually dial that round back in once I get up to Darwin to shoot that match. I don't have to go, someone let me into your reloading room, I need to pull all this apart and, load some more ammo again. So that, for me, I was like, yeah, why would I not have one of these on my gun?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Like, I can drive 2 minutes back to the house and change my load and all that, and that's fine. But I mean, those guys that have got to drive 20 minutes, an hour to the range, I mean, the barrel tuner, it just makes so much sense for those guys.
Have you seen a benefit in it? Like, I'm not sure if anyone has. You might have done this, where maybe you're one of those one gun guys where you want to run multiple lots of ammo through your one gun. So you might hunt everything from foxes and rabbits through to, pigs and deer, and then maybe try and shoot the odd F-class or PRS match with that same gun. So they might be shooting, 2, 3, or even 4 different projectiles for that one gun. If you did the work, essentially you could write down all your numbers of where your barrel tuner needs to be spun to for all those separate loads. And then you can just go between the different loads and spin that barrel tuner, and it's going to come in perfectly for all of them, correct?
Yeah, just like running multiple zeros and just marking on your turret, where your 308 barrel shoots, where your 6.5 barrel shoots. Same thing.
Yeah. Yep. Have you done much of that where you've run two different loads in any of your rifles and you've just had different settings for your barrel tuner?
I have. I normally shoot the 147 ELDMs in the 6.5 Creed for hunting, but kangaroos really don't like them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll shoot the 130 hybrids for pretty much everything else. And yeah, I'll just swap between the settings and stuff I have for them.
And those settings are quite repeatable. Like, I mean, your design looks like it's got some pretty gnarly looking locking teeth, which was something that I was really attracted to about the design, because you just sort of get that peace of mind of like, I'm not going to bump it in the middle of a match or the middle of a hunt and have it spin. So yours is quite repeatable going between those different positions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, rad. So we sort of talked about what a tuner does. Is there any point where you think a tuner is it's a disadvantage? Is there any instance where you would be like, oh, I don't recommend a barrel tuner to anyone?
Honestly, I don't think there's any negatives to having it there. I don't think that there are any disadvantages. Worst case scenario, you don't use it. And, I'm not trying to sell people things here. Like, sometimes you won't need it. Sometimes you won't have the time to use it. You'll load up a load, you'll do all your load development, you shoot quarter-inch group, and, it's amazing. You don't need to touch it with the tuner. But the thing that some people don't talk about is having the tuner there at the end of your barrel. It benefits you whether you use it or not, because putting a heavy weight on the end of your barrel, it slows down the frequency at which your barrel vibrates, which is essentially, widening and making the nodes larger. So you're benefiting from that regardless of if you use the tuner or not. That's
heaps interesting, because I feel like, I don't know if this is just me, but I've noticed that when I put my magneto speed on the end of my magneto speed chronograph on the end of my barrel, sometimes I've shot smaller groups with it on than I have with it off. And I guess you're essentially saying that you're slowing that barrel whip down by having a little bit of weight out the end.
Yeah, and that goes back to pretty much the ideal barrel. If we could make the ideal barrel, it would probably be a 1.25 straight barrel, like the barrels I run, and then you get one of those weights from the gym that you do, bench pressing or stuff with, and you just put that right on the end of the barrel. Because that's essentially what the ideal barrel would look like. Really thick, stiff, rigid barrel, but then a really compact weight lengthwise, but really heavy, and that would make the barrel really noodly and really wobbly, but it would make it really, really slow as far as the frequency is concerned of what it would wobble at, if you get what I mean.
Yeah. You said really heavy weight, but you don't know, I might have a terrible bench press. I'm also so glad you just said noodly barrel, because I said noodly barrel when I was quoting Ted Courageous on another one of our podcasts, and I got ripped for it. Like, mates were like, I can't believe you just said noodly barrel. And I was like, hey, they weren't my words. Like, it was someone else that knows way more than me said this. I'm just repeating it, all right?
No, I love Ted. I'm a big fan.
But it's also, when you say like adding a weight to the end of the rifle, like, let's not scare off like the hunting crowd here, because I know there's like a lot of hunters that are obviously very weight orientated. They might be mountain hunters. They want their rifles as light as possible. Your device, the tuner and the muzzle brake combined in one, what's its total weight?
So it weighs 11.5 ounces, which is pretty much what a standard muzzle brake of its size would weigh, plus the tuner. So I think, a muzzle brake of that size will normally weigh about 6 to 7 ounces, and then plus the tuner, which is 4-ounce tuner, it puts you right in the ballpark.
Yeah, so it's not a heavy device. You're not adding. It's not something that you've added to your barrel and then suddenly you've gone, dang, I can't mountain hunt with this rifle, or I can't carry this around in the scrub because it got so heavy. Like, it's not crazy, but the difference it makes is it's a lot of weight for the harmonics of what's going on in the barrel.
Yeah, so you're only adding 4 ounces to the end of your barrel. But, for those guys that are conscious of that thing, we do have a titanium version coming out, probably about 6 months, where it's exactly the same. It's just the tuner will be 4 ounces in steel, and then the muzzle brake and the jam nut will be titanium, so they'll be significantly lighter.
That's cool. And you've also got another cool device, which I've seen some prototype photos of, which is the tuner without the muzzle brake attached. Because you sort of had, we'll get into talking about the muzzle brake shortly, but, we had a little bit of feedback where people do have their favorite muzzle brakes. Whether it's because the brake's better or not is another discussion, but it's more so people have their favorites and they don't want to move away from it. So you've created the barrel tuner, which has another thread piece, which you can obviously pop your own muzzle brake on and off of it. How far away from making those are you?
We're in the process of prototyping them at the moment. So yeah, I'd say probably about 6 months, because a production run normally takes about 3 months. So yeah, about 6 months away from them being available. And the intention for them was for people with silencers to be able to have a barrel tuner. So you just screw it onto the end of your barrel, torque it down nice and tight. You can use some Loctite or some rock set or something if you want, and just leave it there for the life of the barrel. And then you just screw your silencer or your muzzle brake of choice onto it.
Cool. That's really, or you could just run it obviously without a muzzle brake or a silencer if you were using it on, say, a 223 or something small that you didn't necessarily want that recoil reduction on.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll have a 22 version of that coming out for 22s. So, all the NRL 22 stuff that's blowing up, that's going to be, marketed towards those guys.
That's massive because 22
it's
ammo,
a big deal, yeah.
Yeah, obviously you can't reload it, so you can't tune it to the rifle. So that's probably where barrel tuners had their biggest run, right? Was like the bench rest guys in the 22 stuff, because they didn't have the ability to reload the ammo, so they had to tune the gun backwards to the ammo rather than the ammo to the gun. That's where I think tuners had most success, right, in the past?
Absolutely.
So before we move on to the design of the muzzle brake, because so many people sort of wanted to talk about the tuner, and I've been so interested in tuners, but then hearing you talk about your muzzle brake, there is it's almost like you've put more time and energy into the development of that brake than you actually have of the barrel tuner. But before we get there, I'd be really interested to hear, and for my own knowledge, because I want to know what to do when I get my hands on my own TMB. What is your load development process look like with the tuner? So take us through what you now do. You get a new rifle or a new barrel, and you've got some components that you want to run or you want to try, and you've got the tuner as well. Take us sort of through a start to finish what you do, how many shots you take on each setting, etc., to get to where you want to be.
All right. So first up, I'll run you through how to use a tuner to dial in a load, and then I'll run you through that, because I was on Facebook the other day and there was this guy, he shot 2 rounds and then he did 20 groups of all 2 rounds with the tuner, and he was confused and he was asking people which group to pick, and that's just not how you use a tuner. You pretty much just wasted all the ammo and just drove himself insane. So the best way to use a tuner to dial in your load is set your tuner. This applies to any tuner, not just the TMB. Set it to its 0 default position, and then shoot yourself a control group of 3 to 5 rounds. Then, depending on how big or small that group is, if it's 1/2 inch to 1 inch in size, I would recommend going 2 settings every adjustment. So move it 2 settings and then lock it down. If the group is 1/2 inch or better, I would say move 1 setting at a time. I say that because you don't want to adjust yourself in too coarse of adjustments and blow past a potential node or a potential good setting. But that's where experience, technique, and just the art of using a tuner comes into it, and everyone will learn to read the position of where they're at and how coarse or how fine to adjust the tuner, just based on experience and just learning how this kind of stuff works. let's say we move it 2 settings, lock it down again, and then shoot another group. So the best way to do that is just shoot 2 rounds. If the first 2 rounds are touching, then shoot a third, and then keep going. Go to your next, go 2 adjustments, and then go to your next setting, and then do the same. If the first 2 rounds aren't touching, then that's not a node. It's not a good setting, and just move on. And what you essentially want to do is keep going through as many adjustments as you can until you get a really good tight 3-round group, and then keep going to your next setting, and you want to keep going until the groups open back up again, because you don't want to shoot a really good group and then just stop there when the next setting could have been just as good or even a little bit better. And you could have missed like the middle of a node or a better group. So it's pretty straightforward. I recommend shooting as many rounds as you can. 3 rounds is good, 5 rounds is better, 10 rounds is best. I wouldn't say go past 10 rounds, but yeah, you really want to shoot as many as you can, because like we discussed at Monado, you can shoot a really good group, like 7 or 8 shots into a 1/4 inch group, and then have a few weird flyers. And you can think that you're bang in the middle of a node, the best load you've ever had, and just those flyers were just you, when in fact it might be the load, and you'll dial 1 or 2 settings with the tuner, and you'll find yourself in the middle of a node, and those weird random flyers every now and then are gone. So yeah, always try to just go a little bit further and see what you can get, and shoot as many rounds as you can. But my load development, you can essentially approach in 2 ways. You can completely eliminate seating depth test and just use the tuner to do that, or you can just do a traditional load workup and then use the tuner at the end to dial it in the last bit. I prefer to do a full traditional workup and then use the tuner at the end. So for me, at the moment, I'm shooting the 130 hybrids in the 6.5 Creed. What I'll do is I'll do a seating depth test. I know that they're going to shoot good between probably 50 to 80 thou, but I'll start at 20 in 10 thou increments. I'll go all the way out to 100, and I'll shoot 5-round groups, and I'll just choose the middle of the best groups or the best group, depending on what happens. Then what I'll do is I'll do a charge weight test using the Satterley method, or my modified version of that. I'll know what speed I want to be at, so I'll do a charge weight test around that speed. 3 rounds of each charge weight in 0.2 grain increments, and I'll choose the best SDs. Then what I'll do is I'll load up probably 50 rounds at that point, shoot a 10-round control group with the tuner on 0, and then I'll move it 1 setting, do it again 10 rounds, and I'll probably only do 3 groups just to see which one's the best, because at that point I'll be pretty much in or on the edge of the node, and I'm really just looking for that middle positioning.
Yeah. So by being in that middle position, you're extending your usable use of that load, right? So as that barrel wears out and those lands move forward, by being in the middle, you're still going to be somewhere in that node, and you're going to get the maximum amount out of that barrel and that particular load before you need to look at retweaking the load or changing the position of the barrel tuner, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And then if and when the load opens up again, just do the same thing. Do a 10-round group, see where you're at, 2 or 3 adjustments to just bring you back into the middle of it, and then you're good for probably another 1,000 rounds or so.
Yeah, and talking about loads opening up, I haven't got enough rounds down my barrel to even experience that yet, and I don't think any of my hunting rifles or my dad's hunting rifles are even close to that point yet. Have you seen it? Is there a really specific point where you just go, oh my gosh, and all of a sudden your rifle's just not shooting anymore? Is it that obvious?
I wouldn't say not shooting anymore, but I'd say it definitely opens up from where it was shooting. Like, for example, with a 6.5 Creed, I've noticed around 900 rounds, they'll open up a little bit and just need a little bit of tweaking. And then from there on, probably open up again at around 1800. And then it can be pedantic sometimes until the end of its life, probably around 2,500. So then that's when, the tuner, every 200 or 300 rounds, if it does continually start opening up again, you just, give it a tweak every now and then to bring it back in. Yep. But I mean, when I say bring it back in, we're talking, from 3/8 of an inch to half inch. So not massive, but when you're used to shooting every round through the same hole, half inch group for, 5 rounds, it looks a bit disgusting, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So you think barrel tuners are going to be like pretty commonplace on precision rifles and hunting rifles in years to come? You think it's something that's going to stick around for good?
I think people, if people like me, talk about it in the right way and, help people to become educated, I think it definitely should and definitely would. But it really depends on, the people like me, whether people see it as a fad or if people see it as another tool that they can, have in their back pocket that'll help them out. Because it definitely is. It definitely should be looked at that way. It's not a magical device or anything that's going to get you massive amounts of accuracy increases and all that kind of thing. But it's just another tool, and they're very helpful and very useful. And like I said before, sometimes you don't have to use it, but when you do need to use it or you want to use it, I'd rather have it there than not.
Yeah, and from just from a marketing point of view, it's not a super expensive device. I mean, you've got barrel tuners that you do have to get threaded to a barrel, like separate, not your tuner, and that's also time consuming and then adds a cost to it. But your device, what's your retail? What are you selling them for at the moment? Am I allowed to ask you that on the podcast?
Yeah, well, the website's all done in American because that's where the largest, I guess, consumer base is. But yeah, that translates over to $420 Australian. And yeah, Aussie orders ship from here in Melbourne, and international orders ship from here in Melbourne, whereas all American orders will ship from our warehouse in Texas to the Americans.
Yeah. So for $420, which is not like when you look at the price of some of the other stuff involved in our sport, is definitely not an expensive item whatsoever. Like that's even if you look at components, like how many projectiles that is, and when you look at the time it's going to save you, you've got that device, you move it from rifle to rifle. I mean, I don't want it to sound like I'm trying to sell this to people here either, because I get absolutely nothing out of it, whether you sell more barrel tuners or not. I'm just a believer in the product. Like in my head, I'm like, these make so much sense. So I sort of want to help relay that to my listeners, that I think this is a cool avenue to go. If you're even a little bit interested, just, find a way to get that spare 400, and I think you'd be super happy with it, because I think you can have the product for a long time and you can move it from rifle to rifle, and you're going to save time. And saving time is important because we want to do more shooting and we want to do more hanging with our, families and those other important things in life. So I think saving time is a super critical part of what we do.
Oh, absolutely. And, if you look at it from point of view of I want to go out and buy a tuner and I want to go out and buy a muzzle brake, it'll be significantly more to buy a tuner and a muzzle brake than a TMB, for example.
Yeah. All right. Well, before I've been saying this the whole time, we're going to get to the muzzle brake, but before we get to the muzzle brake, last question was: is there, if someone's got a thinner sporter weight hunting setup and it's threaded, so they've still got 5/8 thread on the end, so they can essentially fit your tuner, is there a barrel that would be too thin that you'd think it's not recommended to try and run it because it's not going to support that device? Or can you pretty much run it on anything it'll thread onto?
So if the muzzle, like the shoulder, is narrower than 0.725 of an inch, I would say the TMB is not for you. But depending on demand, I already have it designed on a computer. I just need to prototype it and get it out there. But yeah, I've designed a smaller, lighter one for those guys running those thinner sporter barrels. We'll just see if the market wants it or not.
I'll definitely take one of those, please. I'm pretty keen to rig my hunting setups up the same as my PRS setup. So flick me one, please.
You can test it out then.
Yeah, keen. Now I'll do all the testing you want. Sorry to my girlfriend and my stepdaughters. I've got to go again. I've got some more testing to do. I'm actually involved in a testing process.
Yeah, well, I'm lucky. I can say to the missus whenever I want now. I'm just going out the back to do some work.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's funny that we're playing this up like we have these girlfriends that are like super hard on us and we can't go shooting, which is not. It's so far from the truth. Like your amazing missus and your two gorgeous kids travelled over with you to Monado for your first PRS match, and like you've got a newborn. How old is your newborn at the moment?
I think he's 10 weeks now.
Man, that's hectic. And she didn't complain once. She was camping. Your kids were so good while you were shooting for 2 days. My girlfriend is super supportive, and like, shout out to my girlfriend, by the way, mate. Just got to get this in there. On the weekend, just gone. She dragged herself out of bed at 6 or 6:30 in the morning, and we went out to my uncle's property where I've got my long-range target set up, and she's never shot a centerfire rifle before, only sort of 20 rounds to the 22, and within a shot, it would have been a first round impact on the 500-meter gong we had up, but I had the wrong, I ranged it incorrectly, so I thought it was further away than 500 meters, but it wasn't. So once we had the right data on, bang, hit that, and then had her do some positional stuff, and like watching her shoot centerfire positional, which can be pretty complicated if you've never really done it before. And she was just smoking this 500-meter target off of these weird props I set up. And then I was like, okay, like she's really crushing this. Let's shoot the 1,000-meter target. And my 1,000-meter target is like man size. So it's sort of like shoulders to waist, and it's only sort of like torso wide. You don't have much room for error. I put a couple shots down, got a win call for her. I sort of got on there 4 in a row. Took me a while to get there. We got the 4 in a row, and then I was like, okay, I'm solid with that wind hold here. And within a couple shots, she was a little bit nervous because she sort of could sense that I was excited for her to hit it at a K. And so she was putting pressure on herself. And then when she let all that go and held exactly where I said, she absolutely smoked it. And I was so stoked, man. Like, and I don't think she kind of understood the significance of that. Like, I was like, babe, there's a whole heap of people that have been shooting their whole life and want to, be able to make a hit at over a kilometer, because we were at 1,019 meters. And she was just like, oh, really? And I was just like, yeah, like that's pretty cool achievement. Like, I'd wanted to do that my whole life up until last year when I finally did it. So
that's awesome. Congrats to her. She did well.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, little shout out to our girlfriends who do definitely support our endeavors here, like massively. Which is super cool and makes it all the much, more enjoyable when they're sort of supporting the passions, which is rad. Anyway.
Oh, no, that's exactly it. Because, I mean, Bronny's the one that sacrifices, not me when I'm out shooting. So, big props to her. Thank you.
Yeah, mate, well done. I think we both just get ourselves some brownie points there. We'll have to footnote what point in the podcast this is, and then we'll tell them both just to listen to it from that point.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Let's go into the muzzle brake before we wrap this up. Let's hear about the brake, because a lot of people see your product and probably think, like I did, I was just sort of so focused on the tuning element of it and the barrel tuner, but I didn't really pay too much attention to the muzzle brake and didn't really realize the energy that you had put into designing this muzzle brake. Like, you didn't just settle for a barrel tuner and then throw on any old muzzle brake on there. Like, you went deep on your muzzle brake design, and just explain to our listeners what you explained to me at Monado about, how you did that.
Yeah, so I was pretty focused on not just having any muzzle brake there just so that you could have the two devices integrated into the one. I really didn't want that. And originally I set out, contacting a few companies about using their tried, and proven muzzle brakes. They really weren't interested. So that was fine. So I set myself a baseline and a goal, which was the Fat Bastard by APA. I think that's pretty much the go-to muzzle brake at the moment. I wanted it to be as good or better. So my first proof of concept, the tuner worked excellent. So from that point, it was really just getting the muzzle brake to work how I wanted. And the muzzle brake worked really well. It was pretty much in line with the little bastard. So then I spent the next 6 months researching and developing the muzzle brake. And it was pretty interesting because I actually quickly realized that the US Army, their Armament Research and Development Command, they did all of the work on pretty much coming up with the perfect muzzle device about 50 years ago. And essentially what they did was they came up with these very detailed and complex calculations and geometry of what the perfect muzzle brake is. And it's scalable, depending on if you're putting it on artillery or a tank or a rifle. You just have to, do the calculations and scale it. And what they found was you can only reduce the recoil with the muzzle brake by 80%. So you fire a rifle, you can only get rid of 80% of that recoil. You can't get rid of any more. So you're pretty much fighting a losing battle from the start. And what that means is when it comes to the efficiency of the muzzle brake, you really can't compromise on your efficiency at any point if that's what you're going for. Like if you're going for outright recoil control with your muzzle brake, you can't have a muzzle brake with, straight ports, for example, that are just 90 degrees from the bore. All those designs where they say it reduces concussion and sound to the shooter. You really can't compromise with those things if you want outright recoil control, because, like I said, you're fighting a losing battle from the start, and every little compromise you make adds up, and it's significant at the end. So pretty much how it goes is the first port of your muzzle brake does 66% of the work. So that port has to be the biggest. It has to be the most aggressive. Then the second port only actually does 22% of the work. The third port does 7% of the work. And the fourth port does 3% of the work. With the fifth, if you do have a 5-port, that only adds you another 2% of recoil reduction. So when you put it like that, you really need to focus on being as efficient as possible, because you've only got so much gas coming out of the muzzle, and you've only got so much pressure coming out of the muzzle. You really can't afford to have that gas escape down the bore and allow that pressure to drop. Every opportunity you have, you need to use all of that gas, and if possible, you want to increase the pressure if you can. And not be restrictive. You really have to just find a way to make the gas accelerate when you can. So it was quite interesting, because after reading that paper, reading a few other papers, and then coming up with my own design based on what I learned from all those papers, I pretty much recreated the APA muzzle brake, like the Terminator muzzle brakes. I was sitting there with a blank slate. I made it based on that. And then I was sitting there looking at it. And then I picked up one of the APA brakes and I was looking at that, and I was seeing how they're similar. And if they had taken the concepts from those papers and applied it to their muzzle brakes, and they pretty much had. I burst out laughing. I'd spent 2 days on this. I pretty much just recreated their brake. And it was at that point I called my missus in, and I had a chat with Bryony, and we were like, oh, you're really onto something. You can create a good muzzle brake. You're on the right track. So then I dived into it even deeper, came up with even more complex geometry, really focused on, all of the research that had already been done, applied it to it, all of the gas divergent theories that they have, and how the gas comes out of the bore. You want an opening, so sort of like a cone shape. for the gas to accelerate and open up. And you want a really sharp V that essentially diverges the gas and forces it left and right so that it can't escape down the bore. So you're maximizing all of the gas that's there, not letting it escape. And then you've got to have these really deep pockets that are shaped like a V that act like a sail, and they catch the gas, and the gas pushes against them, which is essentially where all your recoil control comes from. And then you've got the 45-degree ports where the gas exits. And yeah, I mean, the design took about 6 months, constant flow simulations on SolidWorks and just being up until 3 or 4 in the morning. But in the end, I've got a recoil sled and an accelerometer. And with all of the testing that I've done, I'm pretty much better by a few percent than all of the top muzzle brakes at the moment. So I don't know if you saw, but I put out a post on Facebook in the Precision Rifle group, just asking everyone with all the muzzle brakes that I wanted. So they're all getting sent out to me, and I'm going to do a big video and a test on the recoil sled and compare them all, so people can actually see that the TMB is legit, and it's very scalable, and that it's right there in line with the best designs on the market, and that it isn't just some muzzle brake that's just there so that you can have a tune around a muzzle brake. It's right there performance wise with the best of them. And I'll have a 308, a 6.5 Creed, and a 28 Nozzler. That's a good spread of different calibers to use with it.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I'm super keen to see the results from that. And we discussed that a lot, that so often people get caught up in, wanting a brand name product because, it has that history connected to it, or, this shooter's used it and that shooter's used it. And so they kind of think like it must be the best or it must be better, right? But so often with a lot of these products in any industry, just because they have the brand name or they have that, reputation, they've been used by sort of top people in those regarded fields, doesn't necessarily mean that they are, it doesn't mean that it's unachievable to beat those products. You can put the time and effort into designing something that is as good, if not better, and you've obviously done that. And so that's going to be a big one for you, for people to actually go, oh, hang on, that brake that I've sworn by forever, when you actually put it on a recoil sled, is maybe not doing as much as I thought it was. Like, I've sort of convinced myself that this was the be-all and end-all of brakes, and I've gotten used to it, but maybe it's not quite as efficient as what I thought. So I think that's going to be a bit, pretty eye-opening for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you've shot my rifle and you've seen how it feels. It honestly doesn't move under recoil, even when you free recoil it. You're not getting any muzzle rise really. It just tracks straight backwards, and that's about it. And I don't know if you saw, but Morgan King is pretty much the top PRS guy in the States at the moment. He's shooting a TMB now, and he's going to be shooting a TMB pretty much, from now on. He had a Fat Bastard Gen 3. That was his go-to brake, and now that he's, put them both side by side, he doesn't want to shoot the Fat Bastard anymore. He thinks the TMB is better. He's got a couple more on his way to him at the moment, and we're going to see if we can develop an even better brake, if we can get it even better. But pretty much he had a big win at the Gem State standoff recently, where he beat Vibbett and a couple of other guys, and he was shooting a 6.5 Creed, and they were all shooting little 6 mils, and he beat them all. And he reckons that even with the 6.5 Creed, he reckons he was getting less muzzle rise and really predictable, controllable recoil, and he enjoyed it more than his Fat Bastard and his 6 Dasher. So I was really happy about it.
Mate, that is solid feedback. Like, Morgan King is mate, like, such a top shooter.
He's a stud.
He's a stud. The dude is putting it away. He is, he's an absolute gun. And so to be, have someone like that on your team, obviously they've tried the product and they're not going to just run it just cause. You're not Monster Energy. You haven't come in here and just said, like, I'm going to give you squillions of dollars if you promote my brand. And so they're like, yeah, sure, I don't care if it's crap, I'll do it anyway. Like, the muzzle brake and the barrel tuner is a device that he flat out would not run if it wasn't better and it did not improve his shooting. So that's super cool to see that he's doing that. That's awesome, man. Congratulations to you too on getting that on his rifle and having him shoot that.
Yeah, over the moon about
it. That's the other thing too. I shot your rifle. It wasn't insanely heavy. So I was, like a lot of people think, oh yeah, that gun doesn't move that much because it's probably super, super heavy. But it was cool because you were running like a pretty reasonable setup. Like it's not ridiculously heavy and the recoil reduction was still awesome.
Yeah, it just balances really well. The muzzle brake controls pretty much all the muzzle rise and as much recoil as it can. And it just balances really well, tracks really well. And it's just so easy to get on target quickly, really.
And that's what we were talking about too, about like recoil impulse. And that's something that a lot of people probably overlook, and I'd overlooked. I'd never really thought about it, is like you can reduce recoil. You can have less recoil in, let's say, like a 6mm. Let's say 6mm Creed versus a 6.5 Creed. It's a smaller projectile. It's lighter. You're going to have less actual recoil. But what you feel as a shooter can be different than what the number is, the number of energy in the amount of recoil. And that recoil impulse can be a personal thing, but can also be a very, it makes sense. If you reduce the recoil a lot as far as the force that goes into a shooter's shoulder, but the muzzle hops up, like that's not going to be fun to shoot, because every time you shoot, you didn't feel anything in your shoulder, but the barrel jumped straight up and you couldn't see the target anymore. Well, let's maybe you get a muzzle brake that you feel a little bit more in your shoulder, but it pushed straight back. It stayed really flat and it stayed on target. That's going to be a nicer gun to shoot. So like all these different calibers and people sort of shooting smaller, like the BR-based calibers and everything, you're not just reducing recoil. It's also about recoil impulse and how you feel that. And that's why a lot of guys run stuff slow. I mean, I run my 6.5 at around pretty much bang on 2700 or 2720. Which is really slow with a 140 LDM, but it feels nice. Like I love shooting it for a 6.5. It moves straight back, nice and flat. The recoil impulse is pretty slow, and I can sort of stay on target. So that was cool talking to you about impulse. I wasn't really, tuned into. I sort of knew what was going on without having the words to describe it, and then talking to you about it, I was like, oh, yeah, that's totally what's going on.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's so many things that we could dive in just on that topic alone, really, because you've got like a 6BR, a dasher, depending on what powder you put in it, it can be a real quick, short snap as far as the recoil is concerned. You could get something like a 6.5 Creed and put a really slow powder in it, like, H1000 or, Rotumbo or something like that, really cram it in and do a compressed load, and you'll have a really slow recoil impulse. The recoil may be the same or similar, but because of the duration that the rifle is recoiling for, it might feel a lot softer and it might be way more controllable. And, it's personal preference. People prefer different things. But, whatever helps you control the rifle and stay on target, it's a very interesting topic for sure.
So what you're saying is I should scrap my 6BR build that I wanted to launch into next week and just put a TMB on the end of my 6.5 and keep shooting 6.5? Is that what you're saying? Are you about to save me a heap of time and money?
No, because I'm going to get a 6 dasher as well. So
yeah. If the pros are shooting it, we got to be shooting it too. But hey, Morgan King, 6.5 Creed, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think he was shooting the 154 burgers, I think.
Oh, whoa. Yeah, so he's going like the extreme outer limit burger. He's going for all of the wind reduction. He just wants to hold on the plate everywhere he goes.
That was pretty much, what I got from the phone call, yeah.
And, okay, so this is just perking my personal curiosity. If everyone has gone 6mm and a lot of people are moving to those 6BR, 6 Dasher, BRA, BRX, whatever, GT, all of those calibers, and you've got the top guy winning matches who's just jumped back on the 6.5 bandwagon, what was it just for that specific match? Is he still planning to shoot a Dasher or a BRA at his other matches?
Well, what I got from the phone conversation was it was supposed to be really windy, so he wanted to give himself a bit of an edge over the Dasher with the 6.5 Creed. But now that he's seen that he can be competitive with it, and he's got the confidence of being, competitive with it. He said he was going to probably use it a bit more on those really windy matches. And yeah, he said, he could definitely see other people trending towards that as well. Because I know Dan Bertuccini over there, he's a pretty big deal as well.
Yeah.
He was doing that with I think it was the 144 long range hybrids. And a couple of other guys were doing that as well because they shoot way further than we do. So on those windy days, I can definitely see, why they would want to be doing that. And I would probably be doing the same thing as well, I reckon.
Yeah, I mean, the US is sort of that one step ahead of us as far as like the level of the sport, but also like the access to the ranges, like you're saying. They do have bigger ranges that they're shooting their PRS on, but then they're also crazy weather compared to what we have here. Like, huge winds and different elevation changes and things. So yeah, I can definitely see that there. But on a calm, still day when there is no wind and there's a slight wind, it might be coming up and down, and you'll want to watch your impacts. Those 6 mils are still going to sort of shoot inside the 6.5s, aren't they? Please say yes, so I can still build my rifle.
No, yeah, pretty much. Like perfect caliber for my range here, where it never ever blows any wind. And I was holding straight up on the 1,000-meter target the other day again, which is pretty funny. But yeah, it's not good for practicing wind. But yeah, you just hold straight up pretty much every day, really.
You still made good wind calls, man. That's something that cost me too many points on the weekend at Monado was wind calls and not being confident in my wind calls and not doing enough bracketing. Like that was something I learned from you guys. You were doing a lot of bracketing where you'd have a high number and a low number. So like your highest wind call and your lowest wind call, you had that written down on your arm. So if one of them wasn't working, you could sort of switch to the other one. And I was like, I sort of only clued into that on the second day. I was like, yeah, normally I just lock into sort of one wind call and hope that it holds. But then when it doesn't hold, it goes out the window. So then I started bracketing and it worked for me.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Because that's what I did on the troop line.
Yeah.
I think I was the first person to claim that. I just had a 9 mile an hour and a 12 mile an hour. And just as I was walking it out, I was just looking at the impacts on the plate and I was just adjusting it from there. Yeah. It worked well. I think I breezed through that pretty easily, actually.
Yeah, you did. You cleaned it super smooth. It was fun to watch. And I came in behind you and dropped like 2 shots or something. I was like, ugh. Oh,
yeah. I think, did Ben clean it as well? I don't know. Ben was shooting really good.
So yeah, someone after you also shot it and was super impressive. Okay. But yeah. Man, dude, this has been a really good podcast. We're probably getting pretty close to wrapping it up. Is there anything else you want to talk about the TMB, or let people know where to find info? You've got some videos on YouTube and on your website and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, it's just strikewithoutwarning.com. You can find it on YouTube as well. We've got some videos up there. You can find them on the website and link to it that way. I'm not really on Facebook. I'm just on there to just talk to people and stuff. I don't have like an official account there. And on Instagram, it's just the Stash, THESTACCHE. That's what I use the most. So if you just want to chat and just follow what's going on with Without Warning and the TMBs and stuff, just follow me there. But pretty much when it comes to tuners, I'd say the biggest thing is when you're using it, just don't overthink the results. Keep it simple. If a setting isn't shooting well or a load isn't shooting well, just move on to another setting. There's nothing worse. When I was first getting into tuners, I was first learning how they work and how to use them. I'd have 2 rounds touching, both with the same hole essentially, and the third would, be off to the edge, and I'd be like, oh, did I pull that one? And I'd shoot another group with the same setting, and it would be a little bit all over the place, and then shoot another one and go, oh, was that just me? Just way overthinking it. Just good fundamentals, good trigger press. If it doesn't shoot well, just keep going, and you'll be surprised at the end of the day. If you've never had a gun that does shoot literally through the same hole every time you shoot, how nice and how eye-opening it is to have a gun that shoots like that, because it's so much better, practicing and learning and seeing when you do actually put the shot, because you know that the gun's going to go exactly where you aim it, and then you can actually diagnose, your fundamentals and your bad shooting habits, and it actually really helps you. I really enjoy it, having a gun that shoots well. I do everything I can to have a gun that shoots well, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, at the end of the day, for PRS, you don't really need a gun that shoots better than half inch for 10 rounds. It's not going to cost you points or, get you to miss targets or anything. I shot a match the other day with factory ammo because I didn't have time to load, and that was 1 inch with factory ammo, and I did the skill stage in 53 seconds, and that was I was feeling really good on that, and 1 inch gun that was totally fine. So get your gun shooting as good as you can, and just get out there and practice, really.
Then work on your stuff. Yep, that's true.
Get your gun squared away, and then just go out and do positional shooting.
That's rad, man. I like that. All right, dude, we'll wrap it up, but thanks heaps for jumping on, man. I really appreciate it. I love the product. I can't wait to get one on myself. Thanks for jumping on, mate.
That's all right, bro. They'll pretty much be ready to ship in 3 weeks. So, anyone who's got orders in or looking to get an order in, 3 weeks. So it's second week of May.
Yep.
That's when they'll be arriving. So,
I think that's probably roughly when this podcast will come out. So at the time people are listening to this, you'll be able to throw an order in for a TMB and start getting them under the wire.
Away. Yeah. And then, you'll have yours, and you can tell me what you think.
Yeah, sweet, mate. I'm going to love it. It's going to make me get all of the impacts. I think short shorts too. I think I need to make the switch to short shorts.
That's it. You'll never beat me at a match unless you're wearing short shorts.
Oh, dude, I'm rocking it. Well, definitely for Darwin, but I mean, it's another step again doing it at these cold Victorian matches. I don't know if I'll be wearing shorts in the middle of winter. Those matches, but we'll see. God, love it, mate. All right, dude. Good chatting. Good catching up. We'll talk soon. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, of course, bro. Always.
Peace out. If you've made it this far, thanks so much for listening to the podcast. We are supported by Projectile Warehouse. So if you guys could go over and check out their page, follow them on YouTube and all of the social medias, that would be fantastic. And also if you've got reloading questions or questions about anything gun related and ammo related, feel free to shoot them a message. They're always willing to answer questions for you, and so am I. So reach out to me or reach out to the guys at Projectile Warehouse, and let's see if we can't get your issues sorted, get you to the reloading bench, and get your rifle shooting how you want.